And welcome back to another episode of Dogs on the Couch, where everybody's allowed to have an opinion. It does not matter if you played the game, you are watching. So you're allowed to have an opinion as well. Shout out to the kickoff of the NFL 2025-26 season. And you know what a lot of our focus is here? We are going to talk about those Cleveland Browns who lose yet again in spectacular fashion, the way that they always somehow seem to do. However, I want to get into a bit of the nuances that are being created to subsidize this loss that was taken to the Cincinnati Bengals in the week one opener, because I'm hearing things. I'm hearing excuses for this particular loss that I didn't hear last year. The only excuses or reasons for us losing last year that was given and pushed and put out, especially by Browns media, goodness gracious, it was all the quarterback. It was all Deshaun Watson's fault. Everything was Deshaun Watson's fault. And if you would just have some competent quarterback play, you would be winning these tight or close games where you're right there, but you got such this hot dog water noodle arm quarterback that there's just no way you're ever able to win any games doing that. And I mean, his arm is a noodle. He can't push the ball down the field. He's dinking and dunking the ball. He can't see the open men down the field because they're open and they're down there, but you got to just push the ball because that's the Stefanski offense, pushing the ball down the field, the chunk plays. That's the Stefanski system. That's what the Browns have had so much success with over the past 5 years. Needless to say, his record would show success is actually mediocrity. It's actually below average because his win-loss record is below average. But anyway, let's get into some of the excuses. I'd like to start off with one of my favorite characters who pushes narratives and different things of that nature in local Browns media, Quincy Carrier. He has an interesting take on who's to blame for the Cleveland Browns' loss against the Cincinnati Bengals in the season opener. So let's just take a quick listen to who he blames.
Defense made the plays to win it at the end of the game. Offense was shaky in the second half. It wasn't as good as it looked in the first half, but still, you got multiple opportunities here to win this game offensively. You set up Andre Schmidt for a very makeable field goal, about 15 yards out. I think it's even shorter than an extra point, and he shanked it. And the reason you're even in the position to kick the field goal,
you don't have to be a VIP to get more than just savings.
We got an ad here.
Every customer gets.
Well, regardless, what I would like to get at, my main point for bringing that piece up, that little clip up there, is because he goes on to even say, well, I'm a person who never blames the kicker. I never do that. I would never say that, a game is won or lost solely on the kicker, because he goes on to say, because in my mind, the offense shouldn't leave it up to that. Basically, the offense should be, good enough to where you don't leave it up to the kicker. Here's my issue with the kicker take. The only issue that I have with it. We weren't saying this last year. And If my memory serves me correctly, just last year, Dustin Hopkins, the guy that you paid a handsome amount of money to kick the football, it wasn't Deshaun Watson money, but in kicker terms, I mean, you got a fat contract in kicker terms. He either led the league in missed field goal attempts or extra points, one or the other. Okay, but he was up there in the top rankings of missed kicks, period, be it field goals or extra points. He was probably the worst kicker in the entire NFL last year. Missing kicks. But we didn't blame him. We didn't blame the kicker. Like we didn't do that. We didn't blame the kicker. We blamed the quarterback. And I remember doing several episodes where, I'm not necessarily defending Deshaun Watson, but I'm being a realist when it comes to the game of football, which is if you don't have any running game, your offensive line isn't blocking up to snuff, your wide receivers are dropping the ball, especially your number one wide receiver, and the kicker's missing kicks. How you expect to win a football game like that? You could have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback. If you got all that stuff going on, you can't run the ball, you can't block, your receivers can't catch, and you can't make kicks. How you gonna win a football game doing that? How did we overlook? And I've said this 1,000 times, so I was blue in the face. How do we overlook all of that stuff and point right to the quarterback and say, "Oh, it's his fault"? Yep, it's his fault. It's his fault that kicker missed that kick. Because if he had just threw a touchdown pass, we wouldn't have to kick the kick, and then the kicker wouldn't miss. See, we skipped over all that stuff last year, and we went straight to the quarterback. Oh, well, the quarterback is just so terrible. I mean, he's so bad that, he's got to be the reason that the kicker is missing these kicks. He's just god-awful out there. Can you believe it? So that's why I don't necessarily like that take. Because this was something that we suffered from all year long last year, but we wouldn't point to it. We just pointed to the quarterback. That's what we did. The other take is the drops. Wide receivers dropping the football. Again, the problem that I have with that take is the fact that we suffered from that last year. And we didn't blame the wide receivers. We blamed the quarterback. Said he had a noodle arm, said he couldn't push the ball down the field, said he couldn't see guys when they were open. That's what we said. When, mind you, in the Giants game, we driving down with a chance to win the game. Deshaun Watson throws a dart, an absolute dot, right to Cedric Tillman, right in between the numbers, and he drops the ball. We lose the game on that drop. Nobody blamed Cedric Tillman for that loss. They all blamed Deshaun Watson. That's who they blamed. We all blamed Deshaun Watson. Not even just in that Giants game in specific, but when Deshaun Watson was the quarterback for those few games that we had to start this, I think it was 6 or 7 games, somewhere around there. Throughout the duration of that time, Amari Cooper, who was your number one wide receiver for Deshaun Watson at the time, he led the league. He was leading the league in drops. So your number one wide receiver, the number one wide receiver that Deshaun Watson has, meaning when you drop back, that's the first guy you're looking for. Your number one wide receiver was leading the league in drop passes. But we didn't blame him. We simply blamed the quarterback. That's who we blamed. We didn't blame the kicker for missing kicks. We didn't blame the offensive line for not blocking. We didn't blame the wide receivers, especially the number one wide receiver, for dropping the ball and the number one wide receiver leading the league in drop passes. No, we didn't blame them. We simply blamed the quarterback. Now, for those who will say, oh, well, just, the offense just wasn't looking good with him. The offense wasn't looking good. The offense didn't look good. And another talking point for the offense not looking good is just, well, we can't score 20 points. See, we can't score 20 points with this guy at quarterback. But, when we had Flacco, we were pushing the ball down the field and we were scoring left and right. And that, with this guy, we can't even, he can't push the ball down the field. We can't score more than 20 points. What's going on with this guy? And so, again, we were putting the blame on the quarterback and conflating, the offense not looking good with the fact that they weren't putting up more than 20 points a game. So we didn't give credit for, the game was close and, he was driving down with a chance for us to win, but the wide receiver drops the ball or the kicker misses the kick. No, it was just, the offense looked so bad. If the offense would just look better, if we just had a competent quarterback, then we wouldn't even be in that position for the receiver to drop the ball or for the field goal kicker to miss the kick. That's what was pushed. That's the narrative that was pushed. Okay. However, in this particular game, you have Kevin Stefanski calling the plays, offensive-minded guru, the best play caller ever in the NFL, Mr. Two-time head coach of the year. So you got him calling the plays, not Ken Dorsey. You got Kevin Stefanski calling his plays, running his offense. This is his stuff. Nobody else has got anything to say about it. This is all his stuff. And he has his quarterback, the best quarterback to run his system while he's been here with the Browns, and that is Joe Flacco. That is the most success his offense has had since he's been with the Browns. It has been with Joe Flacco at quarterback. So you got the offensive guru mind, you got him calling the plays like everybody said that he should be, so he's calling the plays, and you got the quarterback who ran his system the best while being here, which is Joe Flacco. So you got those two things that are working for you off rip. And these are two things that everyone was saying, last year, if you had this, you would be winning these types of games that you just had against the Bengals in week 1. However, they didn't win. They lost. And then when they lost, Flacco had a good completion percentage, but he had 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. The 2 interceptions, however, were not placed on him. They were placed on the wide receivers for not catching the football. So again, before, when receivers weren't catching the ball last year, we overlooked that and blamed the quarterback. But this year, when the receivers aren't catching the ball, well, we blame the receivers. They're not catching the ball. We talked all last year about how Jerry Jeudy showed out that he could be a number 1, but then now in game 1, when he have a drop or two, or now it's, well, we don't think he's a number 1, he's a number 2. Well, then why do you got him slotted at number 1 then? Why didn't you draft a guy to be the number 1? I think it was the Emeka Egbuka or something like that. I think we probably had a chance to draft him. He looked pretty good in that first game that he had with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Baker Mayfield throwing him the ball. He looked pretty good. He looked like he might have, that could be a potential guy that's a number 1. I mean, who knows? He looked pretty good in what he was doing. So if Jeudy ain't the number 1, why didn't you try to go get you a number 1? Anyway, I digress with that. Another thing, the average yards per play or per pass attempt, right around about 6 yards, 6 to 8 yards maybe. Right around 6 yards, a little over 6 yards, somewhere around there. Dinking and dunking. Threw the ball 40-something times just to end up with a little over 200 yards passing. That's a lot of dinking and dunking. It's not pushing the ball down the field, which is what's supposed to be happening with the Stefanski offense and with Joe Flacco running it. It shouldn't be dinking and dunking. Now all of a sudden the narrative is, oh, well, that was the game plan. That was the game plan. Why? Why was that the game plan? When last year we were saying that wasn't working. That wasn't the offense that we should be running. We should be doing the Kevin Stefanski, play action, push the ball down the field, chunk plays. That's what we should be doing. But you mean to tell me when we get all of the pieces back to actually do that, instead of doing that, oh, well, you know what? We just going to dink and dunk the ball. Why? For what? Why was that the game plan? Why? When we were saying last year that wasn't going to cut it, that wasn't working. That was part of the reason that, they praised Jameis Winston in the first 2 or 3 games that he started, and he was just throwing for 500 yards. It didn't necessarily mean we was winning, and it didn't stop him from throwing interceptions. But just the fact that he was just throwing for 500 yards, it had everybody so excited. See, this is what we need. We need a guy to be able to push the ball down the field. This is what we need. This is what's going to help us win. We got to be able to push the ball down the field because that's what Deshaun Watson can't do. And now that we got all of the pieces to do that, oh, well, we don't do it. The game plan is to dink and dunk the ball. That's what the game plan is. I don't get it. I don't understand that. So for me, being as though the offense, with all of the pieces that they needed and the correct play caller calling plays, you still didn't score over 20 points. You still only managed 16 points. In my opinion, well, I mean, you could have had Deshaun Watson out there for that. You only scored 16 points. You could have had Deshaun Watson. That's what you was doing when you had Deshaun Watson out there scoring 16 points. And so what they get caught up in, what the Browns narrative pushers get caught up in, and I'm going to play another clip from Quincy in a minute to have him try to explain it and try to make sense out of it, and it doesn't make sense. They want to say, well, the offense looked good. You were moving the ball. Well, the ball was moving. Okay. It moved everywhere except in the end zone. So what good did it do for the ball to be moving around if it doesn't make it in the end zone and can't make it through the uprights? What good is it really doing for the ball to just be moving like that? I would rather the ball struggle to move and then you just still find ways to score touchdowns. Enough touchdowns to win. Because that's what happened with the Bengals. Their offense looked terrible. But somehow they managed enough points to win the game with their offense looking terrible, looking way worse than our offense. And somehow they mustered up enough points to be able to win the game. Because that's the name of the game, to win. The name of the game is not, well, we want to amass a bunch of yards and move the ball. That's not the name of the game. The name of the game is to win. You can have 5 total yards of offense. If you score more points than the other team, you win. It doesn't matter that you only had 5 total yards of offense. You outscored the other team. So that means you win. I mean, it's that it's that simple. Even in basketball terms, imagine the Golden State Warriors offense where the ball moves, but Steph Curry and Klay Thompson can't make threes. So then what good does it do for the ball to be moving so gracefully and you get pass and then you get this wide open three and it's a brick every time. It's a brick. Well, eventually it's well, bro, it don't do no good for us to have this great ball movement if we can't put the ball in the basket. It's eventually you'd be well, look, just give me the one-on-one player that can put the ball in the basket. Because all this ball movement and we getting wide open shots and still can't make it. So you know what? Let's just do the one-on-one guy because I know he can put the ball in the basket. So one-on-one, everybody else get out his way. At least I know I'm be able to score points like this, and now I got a chance to win. In my mind, same thing in football. Because the goal, you got to outscore the opponent. Defense win championships, cool. But you can't win a game 0-0. Eventually, somebody's going to have to score. Yeah, Eventually, you gotta be able to score. Somebody's gotta be able to put points on the board in order for you to win. You can't win a game 0-0. You can't win a game 14-14. Somebody has to outscore the opponent. It has to happen in order for you to win. Period. So let's try to hear reasonings why, even though we still weren't able to score over 20 points, the quarterback still wasn't able to throw for 300 yards. The stuff that we killed Deshaun Watson about. Let's hear the excuses that are being made for Joe Flacco as to why he wasn't able to get those things accomplished with Kevin Stefanski calling the plays for him. Let's hear Quincy give the reasonings for that.
Slow pace because the game went pretty quickly, but a lot of time was elapsing off the clock, right? 7-minute drives here, 7-minute drive back, 8-minute drive here, 8-minute drive back. When you're taking that much time off the clock, you're taking away a lot of opportunity to score. And that was specifically the Browns' game plan this week. They know the Bengals are a high-octane offense.
Why was that the game plan?
What they want to do is keep the Cincinnati Bengals off the field as much as possible. They successfully did that. They won the time of possession battle. This is part of winning the time of possession battle. So, yeah, was the scoring low? Point total wise, we can arbitrarily point to a number that we think the Browns should score and say they didn't get to that number and call the offense bad for not reaching that number.
That's precisely what we did last year when the quarterback was Deshaun Watson. We didn't talk about, well, they only had, it was the time of possession and we were trying to just control the time of possession. No, it wasn't that. It was the quarterback trash and he can't throw the ball down the field. So this is what we're forced to do. And this is why we can't score 20 points a game, because the quarterback is trash. It wasn't any of all of this other nuances and time of possession and, the other team is the high-powered offense and we want to keep the ball away from them because as high-powered as offense for the Bengals was supposed to be, it didn't look like it in that game. So even if I was coming into the game and that was my game plan to play keep away because they so high powered, when I seen that their offense wasn't clicking, I'd have switched out of that and been like, you know what, let me be the aggressor because their offense ain't got it going today. So we need to switch the game plan because they're not out here passing 100 yards to Jamar Chase, 100 yards to T. Higgins. They're not out here doing that. In fact, they look a little confused and flustered. So we need to capitalize on that. We don't need to be dinking and dunking. Let's try to get these chunk plays. That's what we should be doing in this Stefanski offense. Let's see if he has a little bit more excuses because I think one part I might have missed about the number of drives. Let's listen a little bit more.
But if we're understanding the context of the game plan that the Browns were in, the type of game that it was, the fact that there were only 9 possessions in that game, then you start to understand that the offense was much more successful than you would think just by looking at the box score or by looking at the scoreboard. The Browns scored on 3 drives out of the 9 true opportunities that they had. 2 of those drives they could have very likely scored if they had a field goal kicker who could make routine field goals. So that's 4 drives. Another drive was derailed.
So yet again, here we are with the kicker. And I would like to point out the aspect of, well, only 9, because he harps on it a little bit more in the earlier part of that segment where he's basically saying that by them only having 9 possessions, well, it's going to be a low scoring game. Excuse me. That's not true at all. That's just a narrative that's being pushed. Let me give you examples. In this exact same week 1 that the Browns were playing in, there's a couple other notable games, high scoring games that took place. One of those games was the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills. High scoring game. I think it was 41-40, somewhere around there, I think was the final score. Do you know how many drives both of those teams had in that game? How many possessions they had? I believe Baltimore had 9, and then the Bills either had 9 or 10. So Baltimore had the exact same number of possessions, number of drives that the Cleveland Browns did. And they managed to put up 40 points with the same number of drives. The Buffalo Bills, with the same number of drives, managed to put up 41 points with the same number of drives. So just because you only, because I'm going to get to why only should not be the word used when you say that. With them having only 9 or 10 drives, well, they were able to put up 40-something points, not 16. Like that's more than twice the amount of points with the same number of possessions. The Jets and Pittsburgh game, both of those teams had 9 or 10 possessions, 9 or 10 drives. They scored, I believe it was in the high 30s. So again, twice the amount of points with the same number of possessions, the same number of drives, the same amount of opportunities. You know what the difference is? They scored touchdowns. Their offenses scored touchdowns. Their offensive coordinators and play callers were able to design something that got the ball into the end zone. Not kicking field goals, not that. Actually getting the ball into the end zone, getting a touchdown, putting points on the board. That's how they were able to reach these high numbers like that, scoring in the 30s and the 40s. And then lastly, the reason we shouldn't use only when we say, well, the Browns only had 9 opportunities, they only had 9 drives. Well, if you look up the average number of drives for an NFL team, it's anywhere from 10 to 12. So you were right at about the average. There aren't these weeks of football where these teams are getting 14 and 15 drives. Like, how many drives do you want them to have, Quincy? Like, how many drives should it take to put points on the board? Baltimore was able to put a bunch of points on the board with only 9 drives. The Buffalo Bills were able to put a bunch of points on the board with the average number of drives, 9 or 10. The Pittsburgh Steelers were able to do it, as well as the Jets. And the Jets was one of the worst teams last year. Terrible. One of the worst teams last year. And somehow with Justin Fields and a new head coach in Aaron Glenn, they got rid of that other coach. And they brought a new coach in. Like, they didn't play around with the coaches. They was like, bro, you look this bad, all right, we about to get somebody else in here. And they went and got Justin Fields. And truth be told, in my mind, Justin Fields ain't even really all that. Like, he decent, but he ain't Jalen Hurts or none of them. He just all right, man. Like, he just okay. I don't look at him as this super push the ball down the field guy and this super processor and he can read the defenses and adjust at the line. I don't think he can do all that. But somehow they were able to utilize his skill sets to be able to put points on the board. Instead of saying, no, we need you to be this super processor, Justin Fields, they said, look, we're going to look at what you do best, and we're going to utilize that and be able to put points on the board. That's what we're going to do. So, again, to be using excuses of, well, you only had 9 drives, well, that's right about average, because average is anywhere from 10 to 12. So you had 1 less drive than the average. But the reason I don't even count that and I say it's average is because I got 4 other teams as evidence that had the same number of drives as you and put up more than twice the amount of points that you did. I mean, that's just being real. And 2 of those teams got new quarterbacks to their team. Brand new quarterback. So it's not like they've been, they're running the same offense that they've been running the last 5 years. So they're running like a well-oiled machine and everybody knows them. Nah, man, they got a new quarterback on both of those teams, man. New quarterbacks. Same amount of drives, twice the amount of points in my world. So here we are yet again blaming everything else except the quarterback and the play caller. Because last year, that's all we did. We blamed the quarterback first. Then we start blaming the play caller, Ken Dorsey, because for whatever reason, when Jameis Winston took over, all of a sudden Kevin Stefanski ain't want to call the plays no more. Dorsey, you call the plays. I know we brought you in for Deshaun Watson, but I didn't want to let you call the plays for Deshaun Watson. I wanted to do that. But now that Jameis Winston in, the guy who came here for me, I don't want to call plays for him. You call the plays for him, Dorsey. You do that. I'm going to move out the way. I mean, that's 100% backwards. And I didn't overlook it. Everybody else overlooked that. And just, it's Dorsey's fault. What is he doing? What is he doing? First of all, this ain't even the quarterback that he came here to work with. He didn't come here to work with Jameis Winston. He came here to work with Deshaun Watson. And the only time you give him the reins is when Watson ain't the quarterback no more. Like, make that make sense. It doesn't make any sense. The same way that it doesn't make any sense trying to use the number of drives to justify why your offense wasn't putting points on the board. No, it wasn't because you only had 9 drives. That wasn't the reason that you didn't put points on the board. It was whatever plays were being called and then them not being executed properly. That's what it was. Or maybe you had the wrong game plan. Like I said, maybe instead of you being the game plan, well, we're going to keep the Bengals on the sideline with their high-power offense and we're just going to dink and dunk the ball. Maybe instead of that, maybe you should have been thinking to yourself, hey, look, well, while their offense is not clicking, I'm about to try to take some shots here and see if I can't put some points on the board. While their offense ain't clicking and our defense got a hold on them, let me try to take some shots. Let me try to get these chunk plays that me and Flacco are known for. Let me try to do that. Since we're moving the ball so much, let me try to move the ball into the end zone. Let me try doing that instead of leaving it up to the kicker. When all year last year, this kicker that you paid all this money to was missing field goals and extra points. After an entire year of that last year coming into this year, I'd be saying to myself, I'm not leaving no game up to no kicker. I'm going to do everything I can to not leave the game up to the kicker. That's going to be my absolute last resort, meaning it's 3 seconds left on the clock and we got 2 choices, either kick the field goal or throw a Hail Mary. Well, you know what? I'll kick the field goal. But outside of that, I'm finna do everything I can to not leave the game up to the kicker because I watched this happen last year. And I was losing games because the kicker couldn't make simple kicks. The simple kicks. It ain't like you kicking from 50 plus yards or from 45 and out. No, these are simple kicks. 25-yarder, miss. Extra point, miss. 32-yarder, miss. 16-yarder, miss. Wide right, wide left, off the upright. All of this took place last year. All of it. One of the main reasons why we were losing football games, to go along with not having any running game and wide receivers dropping the ball and the offensive line struggling to block. That's all of the issues that we were having. But instead of pointing out and calling out all of those issues, what we did was we blamed the quarterback. However, this year, for whatever reason, we're singing a different tune. We're not blaming the quarterback, and we're not blaming the play caller. When they did the exact same thing that happened last year, it looked exactly the same. The only difference you could say, I guess, the ball was moving. Okay, but what good is that doing you if the ball doesn't move into the end zone or move through the uprights? It doesn't do you any good to move the ball up and down the field if it doesn't result in moving it into the touchdown area or moving it through the uprights. You can move the ball all you want to. In fact, some defenses, like that's what they do. Their defense is designed from 20 to 20 or from 30 to 30 to just give up, just let you have whatever you want to have. And then their idea is we going to keep you out of the end zone. and on the cusp of field goal range. That's just what their defenses are designed to do. Like if they don't have just the best defense, they'll be like, all right, well, look, we just going to, we playing defense from 20 to 20. All that other stuff, we'll let you have that in there. But come red zone, that's when we finna lock in and keep you out of the end zone and possibly push you out of field goal range. So for me, what I'm thinking going forward, the offense can't continue to not be able to put up more than 20 points because there's only going to be so many excuses that you're going to be able to use as to why that is happening before that seat starts to get hot. Because I've been wanted Stefanski gone since 2020, the Jets game. We didn't have any wide receivers. I talk about it all the time. We ain't had no wide receivers due to COVID. You passed the ball 50 times that game with Baker Mayfield. That's just football 101. That's the dumbest thing ever. You had Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. You should have just ran the ball the entire game. I wouldn't have threw a pass. Not a one. Wouldn't have thrown a pass. Not a one. Wouldn't have done it. Wouldn't have did it. So, slowly but surely, if this continues to be the trend where the offense is dinking and dunking, or even if the offense is doing the chunk plays, but you can't get the ball into the end zone, and the kicker keeps missing kicks, and the running game is non-existent. Now, they're supposed to be getting Quinshon Judkins. He signed his deal, and I believe he got to practice with the team and all that. So he could possibly come in and help the running game, and then maybe that will overall help change how some of the things were looking on offense, because Jerome Ford was looking absolutely terrible out there. Mind you, a lot of people was like calling for him to be just like cut. I'm like, wow, after week one, y'all wasn't screaming for him to be cut last year. You know what I'm saying? But after week one, now you want to cut him. Because you're looking for fingers to point, you're looking to point the fingers somewhere. You know what I'm saying? When like they could have just easily brought Nick Chubb back. But guess who didn't do that? Stefanski. Andrew Berry. It was the same thing with Kareem Hunt. You know what I'm saying? Same thing with Kareem Hunt. Because we felt like he was washed. But the Kansas City Chiefs were effective with using him last year, and then they brought him back. They brought him back again this year. You know what I'm saying? So Super Bowl winning organizations looked at Kareem Hunt and said, "We can use that guy." However, the Browns and the super smart offensive gurus and the analytic people, like they looked at a guy who's clearly usable and said, "Nah, we can't use him. We're gonna go with Jerome Ford, Mr. Tiptoer, the tiptoe runner. We're gonna go with Jerome Ford." And then now Buddy out there not doing nothing, now y'all want him cut. Like, make it make sense. None of it makes any sense. So in closing, man, I'm going to say, hey, Stefanski, you better get it together, bruh. Because sooner or later, I'm not going to be the only person pointing the finger at you as the problem. Especially with all that stuff you did with Shador and not giving him the drive because you wanted to give Snoop Huntley the drive just for Snoop Huntley to go be on another team. So I don't know what you were evaluating of him in that 2-minute drive or what anybody else was evaluating from him in that 2-minute drive. Snoop Huntley is who he is. It's not like anybody's looking at Snoop Huntley like, oh, well, I can make him better. No, like at this point in his career, he is what he is. Like he just kind of is what he is, man. So there's no point in doing it. But again, Stefanski just does things that you can't explain. Like it just happens for some reason. And everybody gives him a pass because he's 2-time coach of the year and he's such a smart guy. And oh, look at his beard. His beard is so great. You know what I'm saying? That's the stuff the Cleveland Browns narratives be pushing. Oh, look at his beard. He's such a handsome guy and all this other stupid stuff that don't have nothing to do with football. Absolutely nothing. And their other go-to is, oh, well, he's the best the Browns have had. It's like, okay, he's the best the Browns have had. Okay, but if you look at his win-loss record, it's still mediocre. You're still losing. So it's like, okay, you're still a loser. You're just a better loser. But you're still a loser. Like, at some point, you should be tired of being a loser. It should be like, well, look, yeah, he better than what we had before, but we still losing. So even though he's better than what we had before, he's still not good enough. And then the narrative, oh, well, you can't just constantly keep firing coaches. Well, out of all the coaches that the Browns fired, I never saw any of them coaches except Kyle Shanahan, and he drew up a PowerPoint to make the team fire him. Outside of him, none of those other coaches ever went anywhere else and did anything. Butch Davis, Romeo Crennel, Mike Pettin, the list goes on of guys that came in, was garbage here, and got fired. It wasn't like they went somewhere else and was great. So for all the people, Stefanski he'll have another job tomorrow. Good. Let him go over there and be mediocre. Let him go over there and call these plays that don't get into the end zone. Let him go over there and do that. Like, I would be looking at as a positive. I would hope, like, go somewhere in the division so you could go over there and call these stupid plays. Like, and we can have a chance to beat you. Like, go over there and do that dumb stuff. Go over there with that. Okay? And take your offensive guru and your analytics and all that. Take all that crap over there and go do that with another team. Okay? Better get it together, Stefanski. That seat gonna get real hot, buddy. Because I ain't gonna be the only one that's turning the fire up under there. Dogs on the couch, signing off.